Hello, this is Dr. Grande. Today's question is, can I analyze the case of Summer Wells? Just a reminder, I'm not diagnosing anybody in this video, only speculating about what could be happening in a situation like this. If you enjoy this video, please like it, subscribe to my channel, consider supporting me on Patreon, and check out my podcast on YouTube, Bella Grande Media. I will put the relevant links for those items in the description for this video. So first I'll look at the background in this case, including the timeline of the disappearance, then I'll move to my analysis. On June 15, 2021, 5-year-old Summer Wells was at her family's home in Rogersville, Tennessee. She lived there with her father, Donald Wells, who goes by Don, her mother, Candace Bly, and her 3 older brothers. Apparently, her grandmother lives on the property as well. According to Candace, at about 5:30 p.m., Summer was planting flowers with Candace and her grandmother about 20 feet away from the family home. At this time, Summer entered the home and informed her brothers she wanted to play with toys in the basement of the house. Her mother entered the house just a few minutes later, but could not locate Summer. Candace called Don at work to tell him she could not find Summer. It appears as though both Candace and Don called 911 at about 6:30 p.m. Don told the dispatcher that Candace had been out for a walk, came home, and was unable to find Summer. This is a little different from what Candace said. Later, Candace would say that she does not walk around the property due to fear of wildlife like bears. 5.5 hours later, at midnight on June 16, the Tennessee State Bureau of Investigation published an endangered child alert. This was upgraded to an amber alert just after 11 a.m. on June 16. The officials believed there was imminent danger. Over the next few days, volunteers and members of law enforcement searched the area. A high level of foliage, mountainous terrain, and poor cell phone service limited the effectiveness of the search. Law enforcement encouraged residents to check any type of surveillance camera footage they may have and inspect any outbuildings like sheds or detached garages. They also said look in crawl spaces and barns. On June 18, Summer's father made his first public statement to the media. He said he was at work when Summer went missing. He insisted that Summer would never leave on her own. Someone must have taken her. On June 26, the authorities requested that the driver of a pickup truck seen in the area of Summer Wells' home on June 14 or 15 come forward. They believe the driver may have witnessed something that could be helpful. The truck was a 1998 to 2000 Toyota Tacoma with a full bed ladder rack. Search operations were scaled back on June 27. By July 12, the authorities had received over 900 tips. They suggested that all options were still available. Everybody was a person of interest. On the same day, Donald gave an interview where he implied that there was little hope that Summer was alive. He also indicated that he, his wife, and his mother-in-law passed lie detector tests. On July 15, Don said that statistically speaking, there was a good chance that Summer was already dead. He went on to say, quote, "I hate to think that. I love her with all my heart. If nothing else, I'll see her in the resurrection," unquote. On July 26, according to Don, Summer's 3 older brothers were removed from the home and placed in custody with the Department of Child Protective Services. Don Wells said the house was not safe, trespassers were approaching the house, and the family has received threats. On July 27, the authorities said that the search effort will not be scaled back anymore, but it will be changing. They will be taking control of the search schedule. They were worried about people interfering in the investigation. Now moving to my analysis. Don and Candace both have criminal records. Don Wells has been convicted of a number of felonies. He has been convicted of charges including burglary, theft, forgery, and many others. He has spent time in prison. Apparently, he was criminally active in several different states, including Utah. In October of 2020, Don was arrested for domestic assault. He allegedly was drinking and throwing objects. According to the police report, he knocked Candace down and injured her knee after believing she was cheating on him. Candace applied for an order of protection, only to withdraw it a few days later. According to Don, Candace dropped the charges against him. Don implied the whole incident was based on a lack of communication, and Candace has apologized to him. In addition to Don's criminal past, we know that his 34-year-old son is a convicted sex offender, And as I mentioned, Candace has a criminal record as well. She was convicted of domestic abuse and disorderly conduct in Wisconsin. This case has generated a lot of rumors, some of which the police have addressed. For example, some people believe that the police were using psychics to help locate Summer. The police have denied this claim. The police have asked for people to stop speculating online about what could be happening in this case. I guess there's this idea that they are reading these different speculations and they're forced to investigate each one. This doesn't make any sense to me. I can understand them asking for people not to call in unhelpful or inappropriate tips, but as far as speculation, I don't really know how that could be a problem. It sounds as though the authorities are simply letting themselves get overwhelmed, probably because they don't have a lot of experience with this type of investigation. It's not a common problem in rural Tennessee. Maybe the authorities simply need help finding the off switch on their electronic devices. Perhaps they should consider spending less time on the internet worried about speculation and more time focused on collecting actual evidence. Let's look at the theories in this case. What could have happened here? Essentially, there are really only 4 possible theories of the disappearance of Summer Wells. Theory number 1. During the few minutes when Summer was unsupervised, she walked out of the house into the rugged terrain. It appears as though there is a door directly out of the basement into the yard, like the house is built on a slope, so it's not like she would have had to come up steps into the first floor and then exit. This is also important to keep in mind when considering the other theories, like that somebody may have entered the house and taken her. As far as this theory, the one where she walked out on her own, I think it's quite possible that people searching could have missed her in the terrain around the house, but I don't think it's likely. With this explanation, Summer would have had to do something that she never did before, walked off into the woods or down the driveway. What would be her motivation? Also, it is believed that she was barefoot. It's hard to imagine that she would have made it too far in that state. Theory number 2. Something happened to Summer in or around her house, like an accident or maybe something intentional, which resulted in her death. The whole story of her disappearance is to cover up whatever happened. There's not a lot of evidence that supports this theory. The parents have been interviewed by the media many times, and they really don't seem like sophisticated criminals. I imagine the police have searched the house for any evidence of a person being killed or injured. There's been no report of them finding anything like that. Also, her older brothers and grandmother would have probably seen something. It would be difficult to get all parties not to reveal any information. It would take a relatively sophisticated conspiracy to keep this secret. Some people pointed out that both Don and Candace have referred to Summer in the past tense. I don't really think this means anything. Again, these individuals do not seem particularly sophisticated. They are not used to speaking as precisely as would be required to avoid criticism. They are probably accustomed to casual conversations, which do not lead to a great deal of scrutiny. It's important to remember that there is no baseline established in terms of what Don and Candace were like before the disappearance. I imagine they had the same mannerisms and speech patterns at that time. There's no way to know if they are acting out of the ordinary without seeing how they acted before. Some have pointed out that they both have criminal records. Don's history is particularly worrisome. These criminal histories are not a great sign, like it doesn't help them, but it also doesn't indicate they would necessarily do something more serious. If anything, it appears as though Don is more experienced with getting caught for crimes than getting away with them. There are a few concerning factors that support this theory, including the fact that Child Protective Services removed the other children. We don't know why they did that, but it would stand to reason that it's a bad sign as far as the safety of living in that house. It was mentioned in the October 2020 police report that Don was found intoxicated. Alcohol can lead to accidents and crime. Candace and Don passing polygraphs doesn't really mean anything. It only means the police chose not to accuse them of anything at that time. Polygraphs are nonsense. They are simply part of an interrogation technique. They don't reveal if somebody has lied or not. It's a fantasy that police invest in that is not based on any science. An examinee could be hooked up to a refrigerator or a sewing machine and get the same result as far as knowing something about deception. It appears as though Candace and Summer were swimming earlier on the day that Summer disappeared, presumably in a Tennessee state park called Warrior's Path Pool. There was also this mention of 2 other people who were there, a 15-year-old boy and Candace's mother, who is also named Candace. There was a report which indicated the 15-year-old boy had to rescue Summer after she experienced some difficulty in the water. One possibility would be that Summer was the victim of dry drowning. This type of death has a delayed effect. The individual dies sometime after the incident. She would have seemed fine, only to die hours after swimming. Candace has denied that Summer went under the water while swimming. Moving to theory number 3. A random abduction occurred, so Summer was not targeted, rather a person who just happened to be around decided to kidnap her. Here's the problem with this theory. The location of the family home in this case is such that we would not expect an abduction to occur there. It's in a rural part of Tennessee and off of a road that not many people would drive on. In addition, the house itself is on a hill and about a half-mile away from the road. When people hear that a child was abducted from the house, they may think it's some random act, where an assailant pulls right up in front of the house, grabs the victim quickly, pulls the victim into the car, and takes off. That doesn't seem to be what happened here. Again, this is not some place where people would just happen to drive by. This brings me to theory number 4. Summer was kidnapped by someone who wanted her specifically, like she was targeted by an assailant. It was premeditated. This theory explains how the assailant or assailants knew she was on the property, how somebody could have abducted her from that rural property, and how they could have maneuvered past any potential witnesses, like they had scoped out the situation in advance. They understood where people were and where objects were. This allowed them to manage the logistics of the kidnapping. Don said in one interview that he thought human traffickers probably abducted Summer. This is pretty unlikely. There is a higher probability that the assailant was someone who wanted to directly harm her rather than sell her to someone else. When considering these theories, if I were to rank them from the most probable to the least probable, here's what I would say. I would go with the most probable as theory number 4. Summer was abducted by an assailant who specifically wanted her. Then theory number 2, a cover-up of an accident or homicide. These two theories are really close in my opinion, but based on what's available right now, I would put the assailant theory ahead of the cover-up theory. Next would be number 3, a kidnapping that was random. This is very unlikely. And the last theory is number 1, Summer wandered into the woods on her own. This is an extremely low probability event. It is important to keep in mind that this is only my opinion, and there is probably evidence the police have not released, which could greatly affect the probabilities associated with each explanation. One thing that occurs to me is if the police suspected the parents, they probably would want to keep that a secret. The police would want the parents to keep talking to the media and blocking themselves in as far as their story. My final thoughts in this case. I think what's so scary about this case is that a 5-year-old girl went missing in the early evening from a rural house, and the last time she was seen was in the house. How did this happen? All possible explanations are terrifying. It's hard to know if there's really any lesson to be learned here. One would think that a child would be quite safe in the basement of a rural house on a hill in the middle of the woods, especially when considering there were several other people in the area. I guess the lesson here could be that one can never be too careful. Those are my thoughts on the case of Summer Wells. Please put any opinions and thoughts in the comment section. They always generate an interesting dialogue. As always, hope you found my analysis of this topic to be informative. Thanks for watching.